Warning, this video contains details regarding subjects of injury, mentions of death, medical gaslighting/neglect, and graphic descriptions of bodily harm. Viewer discretion is advised. Disclaimer, this video has been scheduled for multiple months and is incredibly late, so please bear with me. I hope you understand, and again, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello everybody, my name is Lavender Works, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I have a little bit of a story. This is a real thing that happened this week. I went to the hospital, and I wanted to talk about it. Exactly 7 days ago, I posted this video, and it was talking about how the hand that I used to edit, which was my dominant hand, my right hand, is out of commission because it is contracting. As you can see, it's still contracting. My pointer fingers, like, bent, all of this stuff. You can go watch it to get an explanation of that. Originally, we thought that it was just carpal tunnel because that happens in carpal tunnel. Sometimes the muscles contract really bad and it can go in on itself like this. And so I was already planning to see a doctor about it. I was already planning to get tests and stuff and get it looked at and stuff. And then the next day, after I posted that video, this hand, the only remaining hand I have left, my left hand, started to retract as well, and it retracted all the way. So both of them were retracting at the same time. As you can probably guess, I couldn't do anything, I couldn't lift anything, and I didn't know what to do because I wasn't able to. I had an appointment with a neurologist, which I still have, but is not till October. My parents took me to the hospital, or were going to take me to the hospital, and on the way there, like over the course of the 20 minutes that we were on the road, it started going up my arms and to my neck. And when it got to my neck, I couldn't hold my head up anymore. I couldn't really talk, at all, because after it went to my neck and my head started drooping, it went into my jaw. So I could feel the tension in my jaw, and it was holding my jaw closed, so I couldn't talk. After it got into my jaw, it started going down. I would like to say down my spine, but that's probably not an accurate term. Down my spine and into my back, and so my back started to stiffen, and then after my back started to stiffen, it worked its way down to my legs, and so on and so forth. And by the time my mom had figured out what was going on, because we were having a conversation, we were talking about how my hand was doing and how my bad hand was doing and what we were going to tell the hospital when we get there. We were actively having a conversation as I started to have full body contractions. And so by the time my mom realized what was happening, I started to have a really, really hard time breathing. And I believe with my full heart, my full chest, every single atom in my being, that it started to go into my chest area where my heart and my lungs are, because I was struggling to breathe. I was gasping for air. I could not get any breaths in, and at that time I also was having what my mom describes as convulsions, but I don't know if they were actually seizures or if it was just another type of contraction. But my eyes, when I would try and gasp for air, my eyes would roll into the back of my head, and my eyelids would flutter really rapidly. And so I was having a really hard time breathing, and she was having to put oxygen, because she has oxygen, because she has health issues too. And she was putting her oxygen in and out of my nose and calling the paramedics and having them come and pick me up, because to me, it felt like I was in the process of losing my life. And she had to sit there and watch, and we were still 20 minutes away from the hospital. The paramedics got there, they met us at a gas station, and by the time they got there, I was gasping for air, and I couldn't move, I couldn't talk. It was like total, I couldn't even feel my body from the neck down. It was all numb. It was like nothing from the neck down existed at all. They did their little tests, their preliminary tests. They checked my eyes. They tried to get me to speak. They lifted my hands and my arms, and they all fell. And then they tried to get me out of the car. I don't quite remember what happened between the car and the ambulance. I kind of remember them having to struggle to get me out of the car, but my eyes kept doing the fluttering thing, and so that's all I remember from the transfer from the car to the ambulance, is my eyes just doing the fluttering over and over, and me being panicked. I don't know if my body really cooperated or anything, but they got me into the ambulance and they hooked me up. They did not give me oxygen, I would like to note, even though I was struggling to breathe. I don't know if it's because they needed to wait to see if anything else like worsened or what, but I was actively gasping for air in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. So I have no words for that. I don't know what the dealio with that was, but I was having a hard time breathing. We got to the hospital, obviously. You know how when you go through the emergency door, and they have like the hallways and stuff, and they kind of sit you there while you're waiting to get your room? I had to sit there for like a good 15 minutes, also gasping for air, also having the eye flutter thing going. And one of the paramedics even said, "Hey, is she having a seizure?" Seizures were never mentioned again, so I don't know what was going on with that. I couldn't feel my body still. It was still contracting, and every so often would make complete fists, and then it would go in. I could feel every muscle in my body. Like it didn't feel like the rest of my body existed, but I could feel each muscle contracting individually, and it was excruciating. There was so much pain, and there was so much agony, and I was crying, and I was gasping for air, and I was looking around frantically. They put me in a room, in like a triage room. The first couple of nurses that were in there were quite rude. One of them was just like yelling orders at me, like, tell me your name, lift your arm, etc., etc. She's been told that I can't move or talk at all, and she's screaming in my ear, and all I could think of was like, girl, I'm not deaf. I can't talk. I can't do what you want me to do. Like, were you not paying attention when you got debriefed, girl? Like, nurses hooked me up to the blood pressure monitor and the little sticky thingies that they put on your heart, and they also did the blood draws, which my veins didn't really want to cooperate at first, and the little thing that they put on the pulse ox or whatever it is. And then the first doctor came in, and he took one of those little like things that they put on the otoscope to look in your ears and down your throat and stuff, and he took the tip of it, and I could feel him digging it into the bottom of my foot, but the only movement that my foot made was the natural, like, involuntary reactions. I couldn't move my foot myself. It was all involuntary. And so he looked at that, and he asked me a couple questions. I couldn't answer the questions. I don't know why they kept asking me questions I physically could not answer. And so he looked at that, saw that I involuntarily moved, and was like, well, you still have feelings, so that's good, and walked out. My mom came into the triage room, and she sat down, and she talked to me, and she talked me through it, and helped me calm down. And I was really, really scared and everything, and I was sobbing the entire time. And so nurses came in and out to check on things and get blood draws and put an IV in and all of this stuff. And then that same doctor came back and did the otoscope piece on the bottom of my foot again. Still was an involuntary movement. I did not move it at all. And then he talked to my mom, and I didn't quite listen to the conversation that they were having, so I assumed that she just explained what was going on. And what I remember in that moment is just looking around and trying to focus on anything other than what was happening. And I also remember that if I looked too far up, that the eyes would start fluttering again, which is why that's why I don't know if it was a seizure or if it was also a contraction, because it took me looking up far enough for it to happen. And so my mom talked to the doctor, and he left. That doctor was never seen again. Nurses were coming in and out for a while, and then this really nice doctor came in, and he was like, and by that point I could at least talk. Still couldn't move, still couldn't feel my body, but I could at least talk. And so I explained in my own words and how I felt, and he was like, how you feel and how you say it, top priority. I'm gonna do my best. And I was like, okay, I believe you, because this doctor was really nice, and he was really kind, and he listened. He wasn't my doctor by the end of it. I feel like if he was, he would have done better, but it is what it is. So we waited in triage for, I want to say like 3 or 4 hours, and then they admitted me. And they admitted me because they didn't know what was going on, but they ended up treating me as if I was having a stroke. So they gave me a bunch of medicines that help people with strokes, and they put me on liquids, and gave me like pain, like not like opioids or anything, but like Tylenol and stuff like that. And for like 16 entire hours straight, I couldn't move. I couldn't feel my body. I except for like the muscles, like I said, I could feel each individual muscle contracting, but I couldn't feel my body parts, if that makes any sense. Like, it was like my head was detached and there was no body there. Or I guess a better way to explain it would be like my head is still my head, but like the rest of my body doesn't exist, but like all of the nerves and the muscles, like that one picture where it's just like the nervous system laying out, is like that, where I could feel the nerves, I could feel the muscles, and I could feel the pain, but I couldn't feel my body. My body was not there. And so for 16 hours, I just laid in bed, and I cried, and I sobbed, and I prayed to every god that I could think of, because it felt like I was dying. Like, it genuinely felt like I was going to die. And in the ambulance and in my mom's car, And in the triage room, I could feel myself fading. Like, I could feel myself deteriorating, and there were quite a few times when I almost stopped breathing, and I almost passed out, and I could feel myself just giving up. And through all of the huffing and the puffing and the gasping for air, I fought. I fought. I made myself keep breathing. I consciously reminded myself to breathe, because you automatically breathe. Everybody automatically breathes on their own. But I made myself aware of the fact that I was having a hard time breathing. And I forced myself to consciously keep breathing. And I took big, deep breaths, as big and as deep of breaths as I could. That way, that my lungs could fill and empty, even if not at a normal pace. At least they were getting air in, and at least the air was coming out, even if it wasn't at a steady pace. And so 16 hours passed, and they still didn't know what was going on. And I had nurses and tech people and a couple other doctors, and they gave me all of these tests, and they ran my panel like 4 or 5 times. And then I got a CT scan, and then I got an MRI, and I was supposed to get a heart echo before I left, but I guess they decided that that wasn't necessary anymore. And so when I did finally start, and I started regaining mobility, except for in this hand, I want to say over the course of like the following 2 hours. And it started at my feet. It started with my left foot, and I started to be able to move my toes, and then I started to be able to move my foot, and then my ankle, and so on and so forth. And then it was like every 20 minutes for the next 2 hours, I slowly regained another limb or another section of a limb, and it was really weird. And I didn't like not having agency over my own body, and I wouldn't wish that situation on my worst enemy. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I have many enemies, and I would not wish that on any of them. It was terrifying. And so over the course of the next 2 days that I was in there, they had occupational therapists and speech therapists and all of these different people come and give me evaluations, and a psych came and gave me an evaluation as well. And they did ask, like, is there any way that you were having like a mental breakdown or anything? And I was like, no, I know what a mental breakdown feels like. I know what a mental breakdown, and I know what psychosis feels like, and that was not it. Like I said explicitly, that was not a mental breakdown. That was not a psychotic break. I know what that feels like for me, and that wasn't it. And so the psych, bless her, was like, okay, well, that's the lowest list. That's lowest on the list of possibilities, but we have to ask anyway. I was like, okay, that's fine. And so they did all the tests, and they did like the contrast and everything, and then we just sat. We sat and waited for a day to see if anything new was going to pop up. And all of my panels were clean, and all of the tests were clean. And despite the fact that I was struggling to walk, and I still am struggling to walk, by the way, and did not regain mobility of the right hand, they somehow came to the conclusion that it was, and I quote from my discharge papers, altered mental state. So if you don't know what that means when they put altered mental state, on a discharge paperwork, that means that they think that you went crazy and were in some sort of psychosis. Now, before you get your little tinfoil hats on, and before you act like you're a professional in my comments, I am aware that there are some, like, mental things that can cause, temporary paralysis. Like, I understand that there are some people that have psychosis so bad that it affects their body in that way. My mom was having a conversation with me, a clear, concise, normal conversation. I was not slurring my words, I was not acting grandiose in any way, I was not having any delusions. She watched my body go into paralysis. She watched me struggle to breathe. She had to bang on my chest like 5 times to make sure that I didn't pass the fuck out. So, with that in mind, I would like to go into my plan for how I'm going to see what the fuck happened, okay? My CT scan was negative for anything, even with contrast. My MRI was negative. Never got the heart ultrasound, but that probably would have been negative as well. There are 2 things that I am thinking that it could be. One of them is what is it? Dystonia. One of them is just, there's a specific type of dystonia that affects the hands, and that was my original thought, other than the carpal tunnel, because it could have started as carpal tunnel, but it for 100% is not carpal tunnel anymore, because if it was carpal tunnel, then my hand would have regained mobility by now. I would have been able to use it in the same way I can use this one. So it's definitely not, it's either not carpal tunnel at all, or it's not just carpal tunnel, and so I'm looking into dystonia as a possibility. And one of my friends who has chronic illnesses has suggested the possibility of a functional neurological disorder, and they were explaining to me how a lot of FNDs come with physical symptoms that have no explanation medically. And so I've been looking into that as well. And as I said at the beginning of the video, I have an appointment with a neurologist. I'm going to try really, really hard to see what is happening, because if it can happen once, what's stopping it from happening again? And if I can survive it once, because I will take this to my grave, that was a near-death experience. I almost died. I will not be told differently, because it was traumatic, and I felt like I was going to die. I felt like I was going to die, and I could not breathe, and my heart was racing, and all of the things that they talk about when you're close to death happened, and I will not have my mind changed on that. And what's stopping my body from doing that again, right? So that is the plan. I'm going to go to the neurologist, I'm going to bring up dystonia, and I'm going to bring up FND, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of it. And I've already talked to everybody that's close to me, and I've said, like, if I can just get by with managing it, even if it is just carpal tunnel and it happened to be an extreme case of carpal tunnel, if I can just figure out how to manage it, I can work around it, because I'm somebody who's like, fuck it, we ball. TLDR, I almost died this week. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I don't know when this is going to be put out, but thank you for watching, and feel free to comment if you have experienced something like this, or if you know somebody who's experienced something like this. I desperately need any advice that I can get going into the neurologist and stuff. I may have already went to the neurologist by the time this is posted, but any information helps. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Here's my really fucked up heart. Okay.